This is Daniel Simon at Baton Rouge Community College, and this week I have a preview about the upcoming History 1123 course for the spring semester. So right now, if you look at Canvas modules, you should have a bunch of things that you need to complete for the beginning of the semester. As of now, I did have at the top information about the course, which includes the syllabus, a bunch of preview videos going into the background of the course and the syllabus. And then students should be, trying to complete the pre-test, which needs to be completed around week 1 of the semester. Now, I am going to have a little preview video you see here, which will go into the different assignments I'll have at the beginning of the semester for weeks 1 and 2. That's mostly what I'll talk about in this video, and I'll kind of send out some reminders too about things that are upcoming that need to be completed toward the semester. So as of now, you see the course is going to begin on Monday, January 12th. And for weeks 1 and 2, there will be some assessments I'll have out that are kind of important that you need to complete starting in the first few weeks of the semester. I know for my first major lecture and assessment I'll have will be on the age of exploration, also called the age of discovery, which you'll see will be assessed with Canvas quiz number 1. These are a series of lectures that go into the background of mostly European exploration, where the Portuguese and the Spanish were the main ones that began to explore parts of the old world like Africa, also the New World as well. And so there should be an announcement about that, about those lectures, and also the assessment that goes with it, Canvas quiz number 1. So that needs to be completed. I'll talk about later when that is. And then, of course, I do have the different lectures that are out there. These are on my YouTube channel. Part 1, of course, the background of the Portuguese. I kind of go into that first and what that age of exploration was. I do talk about Prince Henry the Navigator and some of these other explorers who were kind of famous. I think Vasco da Gama was one of the most famous of the Portuguese explorers early on. I do go in the background of Christopher Columbus. Of course, his expeditions lead to why the Europeans began to explore and conquer and colonize, of course, the New World eventually. So kind of go into that, talk about the aftermath of also Columbus's voyages. Part 2 goes into the voyage of Ferdinand Magellan. It's famous for going around the world, circumnavigating the world. So I kind of talk about that. Talk about also some of the other expeditions that explored parts of the world, especially the areas of America, North America, go into also as well. There is a combined version, I think, of that lecture. I think it's part 1 and 2 together, kind of basically similar and kind of the same lecture, more or less. I do have some audio podcast versions where you can just listen to the lectures, which I think that one's got them both combined together overall. That is the World Exploration PowerPoint that goes with the lectures, pretty much the same as what is in the lectures. And it does have added class notes in it. So make sure that you download that file if you want, class notes for each PowerPoint slide, because I do add those in there for it. If you don't download it, you won't be able to see them. And it's not in the PDF either. So that's something kind of important. That you can see there can be started, like I said, on Monday, January 12th. And then I've got a due date right now, Friday, January 23rd, for that first major assessment on exploration, which could be, extended more or less. I don't have it up, but I think starting in week 1, I'll have discussion type section 2 as well in Canvas. If you got a question, about the lecture, or you want to add comments, which is connected to bonus points, of course. If you go down further into modules as well, I do also have another lecture you can start on Monday, January 12th, assessment, which goes into the background of the conquest of America. When the Conquistadors came into the Americas, and that kind of goes into famous conquistadors like Hernan Cortez, Francisco Pizarro. You may have heard of them. That are well known, and that's going to be assessed into Canvas quiz number 2, which is right here. So that kind of discusses the lectures and also the Canvas quiz number 2 assessment that you'll have to complete. So both 1 and 2 are, 100 points each. You can see here the first one, like the part 1 lecture. That one goes into like the background of the conquistadors, which conquistadors call it sometimes the La Conquista, the Conquest, I think is what they dubbed it. And so it kind of goes to like some of the early conquistadors, like Juan Ponce de Leon, of course, one of the most famous ones they had. You may have heard of Balboa. He was another one that was big, that was famous. But mostly I go into like Hernan Cortez the most, who's well known. Part 2 continues. I go into like some of like the other conquistadors, like especially Francisco Pizarro, who was pretty ruthless, who conquered like Peru, etc. So I kind of talk about that. And I do go into like early Spanish colonization of the Americas. There's also an audio podcast version. I don't really have a combined version. I think the two together, but there is an audio podcast where I kind of combine the two together. So that's the PowerPoint, of course, for use for those lectures, kind of combined together. And it does have like the class notes that are in it for each slide, more or less. So that can be started Monday, January 12th. And of course, you can see here that assignment's going to be due later, Monday, January 26th. But like I said, it could be extended more or less. If you keep going down later, not now, I know in weeks 3 and 4, I'll go more into some other historical topics. I'll get into the Protestant Reformation, where we talk about how that changes Europe drastically in the world. So I'll talk about that. That'll be assessed later on in Canvas quiz number 3. And then I'll get into like a more difficult section of the semester, which will also be for weeks 3 and 4. You can see Monday, January 26th, when that'll be later. But that'll be more or less for the age of absolutism, where I go into like nation state building and things like that, which take place in countries like Spain, France, Austria, Prussia, Russia, etc. And I do kind of talk about that period a great deal. So it is a big part of the History 1123 course, this period. That's why I kind of go into that, more or less. But that'll be like an assessment that'll be like on a exam, like the first exam, which that won't be posted till, like I said, more in the end of the month. So that's it roughly for kind of like the background of the beginning of the semester. I do have other assignments that are out there you need to take a look at. I know they have the first vocabulary assignment, first key terms assignment. I know that's due mid-February, so that's something you should start working on in assignments. They have the book report as well. I need to know, what book title you're going to read for the semester, so you might want to check that out in assignments for that. Also, if you're interested in those 200-point bonus projects, like the Student Historical Documentary Project or the Veterans Project, do let me know about that as well. So don't forget that pre-test is something you need to, get done in the first week or so of the semester. So I know that's one thing that I will be sending out. That's kind of important. You need to get done. I think that's due close to January 20th, I believe is the date for that. So that's it for this preview. I'll have other previews coming up in the future, which I guess I can post. I guess I'll put it on my YouTube channel if you want. But this particular other videos out there, I'll have I know in week 3, I guess when I get there later, I'll have another preview video like this to kind of remind you about upcoming assignments that are out there more or less. Okay? So, like I said, like in some of my maybe emails or whatever, we'll only have assessments out, new ones anyway, every other week. So week 1, week 3, week 5, et cetera, throughout the semester. So I hope everybody has a great time at BRCC, great semester overall. If you got a question about the course, let me know either via email or you can also go to Canvas discussion. So everybody take care and have a great semester again.